It began as the kind of story people envy, the soft blush of young love, a wedding steeped in simplicity and sincerity, followed by an off-grid honeymoon in the pristine, untamed beauty of Whalers Island, a rugged patch of land nestled just off the coast of Washington state. On August 12, 2018, newlyweds Bethany Kramer and Mark Higgins departed the mainland for what was supposed to be a 6-day retreat into wilderness solitude, far from traffic, cell towers, or any connection to the digital world. But when the ferry returned on the 18th without them, and their names never appeared on any passenger lists after that date, concern turned to dread. What was discovered next? Their abandoned campsite eerily intact, yet marked by a conspicuous bloodstain and an unsettling silence, would become the nucleus of one of the Pacific Northwest's most disturbing unsolved cases in decades. And it all starts with two people who, by all accounts, had everything to live for. Bethany, 27, had grown up in Salem, Oregon, the younger of two daughters, known in her community as quiet but innately artistic, a woman who spoke more through her photographs than her words. Her older sister Melanie described her as introspective and deeply intuitive, the type who saw things other people missed. After drifting through barista jobs and volunteer stints, Bethany had recently begun turning her photography into a small side business, with a focus on desolate coastal landscapes. Mark, 30, hailed from Spokane but had lived in Portland for 6 years, working in IT support for a regional software company. Former co-workers remembered him as calm, competent, and slightly awkward, but deeply loyal. He wasn't a thrill seeker. If anything, he preferred controlled environments, but friends noted that he was totally wrapped up in Bethany and eager to please her, especially in the lead-up to their wedding. The two had met in 2015 at a friend's birthday in Bend and bonded over indie films and a shared desire for a quieter life, away from the noise of their respective pasts. Their romance was never dramatic, but it had depth, the kind of relationship that seemed built to last, stable and grounded. They married in Bethany's parents' backyard on August 11, 2018, in a modest ceremony attended by just over 40 people. By the next morning, they were on the road, bound north to Anacortes, where they would catch the twice-weekly ferry to Whalers Island. The plan had always been Bethany's. She wanted to photograph its storm-beaten cliffs and mossy interiors, where the light filtered through dense Douglas firs like cathedral glass. Mark, according to his best man, wasn't thrilled about the isolation but went along with it anyway. The couple checked in at the ranger station midday on the 12th and hiked a mile to their reserved site at Backshore Cove, one of the most remote sections of the island's primitive camping area, offering no running water, no electricity, and most crucially, no cell service. That evening, Bethany sent what would be her final message, a brief text to her sister that read, "We're here, remote but beautiful. No bars though, might be off-grid for a bit. Don't worry." Smiley face. Investigators later confirmed this was sent from a narrow band of signal near the edge of the island, likely just before the ferry departed and cut off outside contact. From that moment forward, Bethany and Mark seemed to vanish into the thick tangle of trees and coastline, their presence reduced to clues and shadows. There were no more texts, no more photos uploaded, no sightings from other campers, of which there were reportedly only 3 during that week, none of whom recalled hearing or seeing anything unusual. At first, no one panicked, people go off-grid all the time. But by August 18th, when the return ferry left the island and the couple failed to board, alarm bells began to ring. A call from Bethany's mother prompted Park Ranger Dana Wiles to investigate their campsite the following day, and what she found would chill even the most seasoned officer. The tent stood zipped shut, the sleeping bags neatly arranged, a pair of mugs half full with coffee now gone cold. Bethany's journal lay open on the camp's makeshift wooden table, the last entry dated August 15th, written in her familiar tight script. But the focal point, the detail that turned a missing persons report into a potential homicide, was the inside flap of the tent, soaked in a substantial amount of dried blood, later confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Bethany Kramer. There was no body, no weapons, no signs of struggle in the surrounding area. Yet there was an overwhelming sense of absence that went beyond explanation, as though the very space had been abruptly vacated, life plucked from it with surgical precision. Interviews conducted in the weeks that followed would only deepen the mystery, painting a picture of a couple entering their new life with love, vulnerability, and maybe, just maybe, a quiet sense of foreboding neither of them voiced aloud. The search began in earnest on August 20th, after Bethany's family, frustrated by the lack of updates from park authorities, formally reported the couple missing to both the Island County Sheriff's Department and the National Park Service. By the following day, search crews, aided by dogs and drones, began combing the dense forests surrounding Backshore Cove, focusing on the narrow trailheads and rocky inlets that wrapped around the island's northwestern edge. Despite the terrain's unforgiving nature, steep cliffs, thick salal underbrush, and deep tidipools, there were no clear signs of Bethany or Mark. However, a few ominous fragments surfaced. Just 200 yards from the campsite, at the edge of a tidal channel known as Griever's Inlet, authorities discovered one of Mark's hiking boots lodged between two rocks, partially submerged and covered in kelp. The boot was dry inside, suggesting it hadn't simply washed out to sea, and showed no damage consistent with an animal attack. More troubling, Bethany's prized DSLR camera, an expensive Canon model she'd rarely gone anywhere without, was missing, despite every other belonging being left behind, including her backup lens, tripod, and even her phone charger. Investigators later confirmed that the camera had not been sold, pawned, or registered in any known transaction since the disappearance. Inside the tent, beyond the large bloodstain on the flap, was a smaller trace sample, spattered on Bethany's open journal and on the collar of Mark's fleece pullover, each of which, when tested, came back matching Bethany's DNA, suggesting a sudden, high-pressure wound, though no weapon was ever recovered. Bethany's journal entries, which investigators pored over repeatedly, had become increasingly uneasy in tone over the span of their short trip. In an August 14th entry, she wrote vaguely about hearing something crashing in the woods late last night, maybe an animal. And then again on the 15th, more directly, something not right here. Heard voices? Not sure. No one else is camped near us. That entry would be the last thing she ever wrote. Park authorities conducted interviews with the 3 other registered campers from that week, all of whom were located and cleared. None had seen the couple directly. However, one local, Eddie Lovell, a fisherman in his early 60s who lived year-round on the southern edge of the island, reported hearing what he described as a scream or something close to it around midnight on August 15th. Lovell told deputies he had chalked it up to foxes or kids messing around, and hadn't thought anything of it until news of the missing honeymooners broke. Another piece of potentially critical testimony came from a 17-year-old resident named Tasha Brinley, who told investigators she had seen a man near the Backshore trails on the morning of August 16th. She remembered him because he was limping, dressed in dark clothing, and walked with an awkward gait. He was not carrying gear or supplies, and when she passed him, he avoided eye contact. Her description didn't match Mark Higgins, nor did it match any of the other campers or personnel known to be on the island that day. Around the same time, scrutiny fell on one of the island's more reclusive residents. Clint Evers, a 44-year-old handyman and commercial diver who had lived on the island on and off since the early 2000s. Evers had a known criminal record, an arrest in 2011 for aggravated assault that was dropped when the victim, a female acquaintance, refused to cooperate with prosecutors. Evers was known locally for his volatile temper and for spending long nights alone in the water with his skiff, often returning after dark. Ferry logs confirmed he had not left the island that week, and boat rental records showed that he checked out a small skiff on the night of August 15th. When questioned, he claimed he had gone night fishing, as he often did. Staff at the dock remembered the boat returning with visible scrapes and heavy seaweed buildup, as if it had been pulled ashore through a kelp bed. Evers maintained he never saw the couple, and that he had no knowledge of their presence on the island. His property, less than a mile from the Backshore site, was searched with a warrant on August 22nd. No blood, no clothing, and no obvious evidence was found, but search logs later indicated that cadaver dogs showed momentary interest near a tarp-covered canoe behind Evers' workshop, interest that was dismissed after no physical evidence surfaced. Then came a baffling piece of physical evidence: a partial set of boot prints found just beyond the tree line outside the Kramer's tent. Investigators noted the impressions were deep, indicating weight, and the sole pattern matched an old brand of work boot that had been discontinued in 2012, a model known to have been distributed to regional construction workers, including during a former job Evers held in 2013. The prints did not match any shoes belonging to Mark or Bethany. Their presence and direction, leading away from the site, not toward it, raised chilling possibilities. When lab results came back on trace evidence collected from inside the tent, they included a partial fingerprint found on Bethany's journal, one that did not match Bethany, Mark, or any of the responding officers. The print was too partial for a full match in the national database, but it proved one thing. Someone else had been inside that tent, likely after Bethany's final journal entry had been written, and that someone hadn't just brushed up against the flap or rummaged through supplies. They had touched a personal item, intimately, as if reading the pages or flipping through it. As suspicions mounted, Evers, who had initially agreed to speak with law enforcement, refused to give a DNA sample unless ordered by a court. That request was filed, but in the days that followed, Evers stopped responding to calls. On August 26th, his truck was found parked at a logging access road over 40 miles from the nearest ferry terminal. He was gone. No note, no sightings, no credit card activity. Just silence. As the case entered the national media spotlight, what had begun as a tragic disappearance started to look more and more like a premeditated act of violence, one executed in isolation, shielded by wilderness, and possibly by a man the island knew well but never truly trusted. In the months that followed Clint Evers' abrupt disappearance, the investigation into Bethany Kramer and Mark Higgins' vanishing grew colder, but never truly quiet. Detectives from Island County, assisted by federal investigators, launched a multi-state manhunt for Evers, flagging his name in border crossings, credit systems, and utility accounts. No hits, not even a whisper. In December 2018, nearly 4 months after the couple went missing, a new lead emerged, one that deepened the mystery rather than clarifying it. A woman named Andrea Penner, a seasonal dock worker from a marina in Coos Bay, Oregon, came forward after recognizing Evers' photograph in an online article. She claimed she had seen a man matching his description in early September, just after Labor Day, lingering near a commercial vessel that had docked for fuel. The man paid in cash and didn't give a name, but what stuck with her was the limp and the heavy canvas duffel he carried. Surveillance footage later confirmed a figure matching that description, but the image was too grainy for positive identification. When investigators returned to Whalers Island in January 2019, during the off-season, they brought with them advanced sonar and forensic archaeologists, focusing this time on the tidipools and sinkholes near Griever's Inlet. It was there that they finally found something, what remained of a human jawbone embedded in seaweed and barnacle growth at the bottom of a crevasse known as Devil's Mouth, a jagged tidal pit that had long been a hazard to hikers. Forensic analysis confirmed the jawbone belonged to Mark Higgins. He had not drowned. Microfractures in the bone suggested blunt force trauma consistent with being struck, possibly with a blunt tool, then dropped or thrown into the rocks. There were no other remains, and Bethany's body, to this day, has never been found. The discovery of Mark's partial remains, however, shifted the classification of the case to double homicide. Public pressure mounted, and in February 2019, a grand jury issued an indictment for Clint Evers, charging him with 2 counts of murder in absentia, citing the mounting circumstantial evidence, including boot print analysis, fingerprint traces, eyewitness sightings, and his unexplained disappearance. Yet even with the indictment, the case remained maddeningly incomplete. Bethany's missing camera, often cited as a central mystery, was never recovered. Some believed that it might contain images from the days leading up to the attack, perhaps even the assailant himself, a theory that lent a haunting weight to its absence. Meanwhile, internet forums and armchair sleuths spun countless theories. That Bethany had caught something on film she shouldn't have, that Mark had died defending her from a predator, or, in a darker turn, that Clint Evers had been stalking them from the moment they set foot on the island. A few even suggested Evers may have had help, someone who knew the island trails as intimately as he did. In 2020, a documentary series aired an episode on the Kramer-Higgins case, reigniting public interest and prompting a few new tips, including one from a former dive partner of Evers who claimed that in 2015, Evers had once drunkenly bragged about knowing places you could dump a body where the sea would never give it back. Authorities couldn't corroborate the claim, but the statement lent credence to the theory that Bethany's body had been weighted and disposed of far offshore. Today, Clint Evers remains a fugitive, with an active federal warrant and an outstanding reward of $100,000 for information leading to his capture. Bethany Kramer is still officially listed as missing, though her family has held a private memorial and had her declared legally dead in 2022. The Backshore campsite has since been decommissioned, no longer available to the public. Hikers and locals say the area feels changed now, heavier, darker, as if the forest itself remembers. Theories still abound. Some believe Evers is long dead, that he drowned or took his own life in the wilderness. Others believe he's hiding in plain sight somewhere, living under a false identity in Alaska or British Columbia. But one detail continues to haunt investigators and family alike. The blood in the tent was Bethany's, and her final journal entry suggested she felt something, an instinct, a fear, that she didn't share with anyone else. Whether it was the snap of a branch outside the tent, the silhouette of someone watching from the trees, or the sound of a boat engine after midnight, Bethany had felt it. And whatever she sensed was real. In the end, it was the kind of case that strips away the illusion of safety in remote beauty, the story of two people in love, stepping into their future, only to vanish in a place that offered no witnesses, no cameras, and no second chances. And while their tent was left behind, zipped shut and blood-stained, it offered no answers, only silence.